If you ever see an old cast iron pan sitting on a thrift store shelf covered in orange rust, do not assume it is finished. Most people look at that rough surface, the brown spots around the rim, the dull handle, and think the pan has been neglected for too long to save. I used to see people pass those pans by all the time, but cast iron is different from many things in the kitchen. Under that rust is still the same heavy piece of iron, and with a little patience, you can bring it back to life. I recently found one for $7.99, and the first thing I thought was not how dirty it looked. I thought about how many years it could still spend cooking in somebody's kitchen. My name is Lucia, and this is exactly the kind of old household knowledge I love sharing, because in Brazil, I grew up seeing women rescue things instead of replacing them. A good pan was something you cared for, seasoned, dried, and passed along. Today, I'm going to show you how to take a rusty cast iron pan, remove every bit of rust, season the entire surface properly, and build enough of a protective cooking layer that an egg can slide across it at the end. And the first tool may surprise you because it is not a bottle of rust remover. It is a potato. Maybe yours is not from a thrift store. Maybe it has been sitting in the back of a cabinet inherited from your mother, forgotten in a garage, or left damp after one careless wash. The story does not matter as much as the condition. If the iron itself is sound, rust does not automatically mean the pan is lost. What matters is removing that corrosion completely, drying the metal before it can flash rust again, and rebuilding the protective layer correctly. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel if you want more simple household methods that bring old things back instead of throwing them away. Here I share the practical cleaning and kitchen knowledge that used to pass from one generation to the next, using ordinary materials, patience, and the right order of steps. Your subscription helps keep those old methods alive. And tell me in the comments before we begin, have you ever thrown away a cast iron pan because you thought the rust had ruined it? You may look at one very differently after today. The first job is simple. Every visible trace of rust has to come off before we season anything. If you seal oil over rust, you are protecting the problem instead of protecting the pan. The method I learned to love because it is simple and surprisingly effective uses only a large potato and coarse kosher salt. Start with the potato. Choose a fairly large one, not because the variety is magical, but because you need something substantial enough to hold in your hand while you scrub. A tiny potato becomes slippery and awkward. A big one gives you a broad, flat surface and a good grip. Cut it straight in half. That fresh cut face becomes your scrubber. Now pour a layer of coarse kosher salt into the dry pan. You do not need to measure it like a recipe. You need enough salt to create an abrasive bed beneath the potato. Take the cut side of the potato, press it into the salt, and start moving it around the pan in firm circles. At first, it may feel almost too simple to matter. Then the salt begins changing. Moisture from the potato mixes with the crystals and creates a gritty paste, and that is where the work becomes visible. Potatoes naturally contain oxalic acid, and together with the physical abrasion from the coarse salt, that helps lift the rust from the iron. As you keep scrubbing, watch the color of the salt. It will stop looking white and begin turning a sandy brown or rusty tan. That color change is a good sign. It means the material you are trying to remove is coming off the pan and into the paste. Once the salt is loaded with rust and looks dirty, do not keep grinding the same mess around forever. Push it out, discard it, add a fresh batch of coarse salt, and continue with the potato. You may need to repeat this more than once on a badly rusted pan. Work methodically. Do the center first, then move toward the curved walls. The sides are a little more awkward because the potato wants to stay flat, so tilt it and use the edge of the cut face to push the salt up along the wall. Get beneath the potato and work the coarse grains into that curve. Then scrub around the rim. Do not forget the little transition where the cooking surface meets the side, because rust likes to sit there and hide in the texture. What matters is not how fast you finish. What matters is that you touch every square inch. Once the inside looks much cleaner, turn the pan and keep going. The handle needs attention too. Rub the potato in salt along the top, underside, edges, and the point where the handle joins the pan. If there is a helper handle on the opposite side, treat that exactly the same way. Then flip the entire pan over and clean the bottom. This is the part people often forget because they are thinking only about where the food sits. But seasoning is not only a non-stick cooking layer, it is also protection from moisture. And an unprotected, rusty bottom will continue deteriorating even if the inside looks beautiful. You usually do not need as much salt on the back. A smaller amount in the center can be spread around with the potato as you scrub. If the pan has raised lettering, a maker's mark, rings, or little recessed areas underneath, work the salt into those spaces too. A good way to check your progress is to wipe one small area with a cloth. On a section that looked orange before, you should begin seeing clean dark iron instead. That immediate contrast tells you the simple scrub is doing its job. Keep going around the edges and underside until you are satisfied you have removed as much rust as the potato and salt can lift. And this is the point where I want you to resist the urge to say, "That looks good enough." Before seasoning, good enough is not the goal. Rust left behind becomes the weak spot beneath your new finish, so inspect the pan carefully in bright light. Look around the rim, the handle joint, the underside, and those rough little pores where orange color can remain. If you still see stubborn patches that refuse to move with the potato and salt, then we step up one level. Use a steel scouring pad or steel wool and give those remaining areas a direct scrub. You do not need to attack the entire pan aggressively if most of it is already clean. Concentrate on the places where the rust has held on. The original method I'm showing you uses the steel scrubber as the backup, not the first move. Potato and salt do most of the work, and steel handles what survives. Once the visible rust is gone, rinse the entire pan thoroughly. Wash away every grain of salt, every trace of rusty paste, and every loose particle. Turn the pan under the water so the handle, underside, rim, and cooking surface are all clean. At this stage, the bare iron is extremely vulnerable to moisture. That is why the next few minutes matter more than people realize. Do not rinse the pan and leave it sitting wet in the sink while you answer the phone or make coffee. Freshly exposed iron can begin developing flash rust very quickly. Take a clean towel or paper towels and dry the whole pan immediately. Wipe the inside first, then the rim, outside walls, handle, and bottom. You may notice black or gray residue on the towel. Do not panic. That can happen during restoration, and the important thing now is to remove surface moisture and get the pan ready for heat. While you are doing this, preheat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. The towel gets the obvious water off, but cast iron has texture in tiny places where moisture can remain. So we are going to use the oven to finish the drying job completely. Put the pan into the preheating oven for about 5 minutes. Even if the oven has not fully reached temperature yet, those few minutes of heat help drive away the moisture your towel could not reach. This small step is one of the differences between a pan that starts seasoning cleanly and a pan that begins rusting again beneath the oil. After about 5 minutes, carefully remove it. Cast iron holds heat extremely well, so wear good oven gloves and remember that the handle is just as hot as the pan. Set it on a heat-safe surface or baking sheet and let it cool for about 5 minutes. We want it dry and warm, but not so hot that the oil smokes the instant it touches the iron. And now the restoration changes completely. The rust is gone. The bare iron is dry. What we do next determines whether this pan stays protected and becomes the smooth cooking tool we wanted in the first place. Once the pan has cooled for about 5 minutes, we begin the part that turns bare iron into cookware again. Seasoning. This is where people sometimes make the opposite mistake from rust removal. They think if a little oil is good, a lot must be better. It is not. Seasoning is built from very thin coats of oil heated onto the iron, not from leaving the pan greasy. The first decision is choosing an oil that can handle high heat. For this method, I like avocado oil because it has a high smoke point and works well for oven seasoning. Pour a small amount into the pan, enough to reach every surface, but not so much that it is swimming in oil. Take a piece of paper towel and spread it across the cooking surface, up the sides, around the rim, and into every textured area you can reach. Then oil the handle. Turn the pan over and coat the outside walls, underside, bottom, and any helper handle or little crevice in the casting. This is full pan seasoning. Do not protect only the place where the egg will sit. Every exposed area of iron can rust, so every exposed area needs that thin protective film. If there is raised lettering or a ring on the bottom, cover those details too. Once everything looks coated, grab a new, clean, dry piece of paper towel and wipe the pan again. This second wipe is not undoing your work. It is one of the most important parts of the process. You are removing excess oil while leaving an extremely thin film on the iron. If you see puddles, streaks, beads, or wet-looking patches, there is still too much. Wipe until the pan almost looks as if you removed it all. That thinness helps the seasoning bake into a smoother layer instead of becoming sticky or blotchy. Thin layers repeated patiently beat one heavy layer every time. And tell me something, when you season cast iron, do you coat the entire outside and handle or only the cooking surface? Put it in the comments, because that forgotten underside is often where orange spots return. Before the pan goes into the oven, place a baking sheet on a rack below where the skillet will sit. There should not be enough excess oil left to drip because you wiped it thoroughly, but the baking sheet is insurance in case a little escapes. Now put the cast iron pan into the 450-degree oven upside down. Turning it upside down helps prevent any remaining oil from pooling in the cooking surface while it heats. Close the oven and let it season for about 30 minutes. That first half hour begins building the protective layer, but one pass is not where this method ends. For a restored pan, repeat the seasoning cycle about 3 to 5 times if possible. Each cycle follows the same rhythm. Let the pan cool enough to handle safely. Apply a very thin coat of avocado oil everywhere. Wipe away every bit of visible excess. Then return it upside down to the oven for another 30 minutes. I have another cast iron pan that I restored and seasoned about 3 times, and it has been wonderful to cook with. Food releases easily and the surface is simple to clean, so 3 good coats can already produce a useful cooking surface. On this rusty thrift store pan, I decided to do about 5 rounds because I wanted a strong foundation and a good non-stick finish. When the first 30-minute cycle is finished, do not rush into the next coat. Put on proper oven gloves before touching anything. Cast iron is heavy, and after that, heat the entire pieces dangerously hot, including the handle. Carefully remove the skillet and set it on a heat-safe rack or surface to cool. Do not wipe fresh oil onto it while it is extremely hot. The oil can smoke immediately and make the process harder to control. Let the pan cool enough that you can work safely while it is still warm. Then repeat. Add a little avocado oil. Spread it over the inside, rim, sides, handle, outside, and bottom. Take a fresh dry towel and wipe away the excess. Check from different angles for shiny streaks that tell you oil is sitting too thickly somewhere. Then place the pan upside down again with the baking sheet below and give it another 30 minutes. Cool it and do the same thing again. The improvement comes from layering, thin oil, heat, cooling, then another thin layer. 3 times if that gives you the surface you want, up to 5 times for the stronger initial seasoning used in this restoration. Notice how different this is from coating a rusty pan with oil and calling it seasoned. We began by removing the corrosion. We refreshed the salt when it became brown with rust. We worked the inside, walls, rim, handle, bottom, and edges. We used steel wool for stubborn spots the potato scrub did not finish. Then we rinsed away the debris, dried immediately with a towel, and used the hot oven for about 5 minutes to chase out hidden moisture. Only after the iron was clean and dry did oil touch it. The order is the method. Skip the drying and you can trap moisture. Leave rust behind and you build over corrosion. Leave thick oil on the surface and the coating can turn sticky. Forget the underside and you leave bare iron exposed. Every step protects the next one. My grandmother did not talk about restoring cast iron as if it were a complicated hobby. A pan was a tool. You cleaned it, dried it, protected it, and kept using it. In Brazil, heavy iron pans could stay in a family kitchen for years because people did not expect them to remain perfect without care. The care was part of owning them. After the final seasoning cycle, let the pan cool safely and look at the difference. The rough orange surface should now be dark, even, and protected, looking almost new compared with the pan you carried home. Remember what went into that transformation. A skillet that cost $7.99, a few potatoes, coarse kosher salt, some avocado oil, a little steel wool for stubborn areas, paper towels, and time. No exotic restoration kit. But appearance is only half the promise. A seasoned pan is supposed to cook, so there is one final test. Put the pan on the stove and fry an egg. You do not need to be a professional chef. The point is to watch how the egg behaves. On a properly seasoned surface, it should cook and release much more easily than it would on rusty, bare iron. When the egg moves across the pan instead of welding itself to the bottom, you see the practical reward for those thin layers. Only a short time earlier, this skillet looked like something many people would have thrown away. Now it is ready to return to the kitchen for years. There is one more lesson to keep after the restoration. Seasoning is not something you do once and forget forever. The coating improves through use and care. After cooking, clean the pan without leaving it wet, dry it thoroughly, and never put it away with moisture hiding on the surface. The reason we heated the freshly rinsed pan before the first coat was to keep water from sitting against bare iron. That principle still matters later. If the surface begins looking dull or the protection seems weak, another light seasoning cycle can refresh it. You do not need to wait until orange rust returns. Small care prevents the big rescue. And remember the heat. The pan can look harmless sitting on a counter while still holding enough heat to burn you badly. Use proper oven mitts, give it a safe place to cool, and never grab the handle because you forgot it just came from a 450-degree oven. Cast iron holds heat for a long time, so if you have a rusty skillet hidden in the garage, sitting in a cabinet, or waiting on a thrift store shelf, look at it again before deciding it belongs in the trash. Start with a large potato, cut in half, and coarse kosher salt. Scrub until the salt turns sandy brown. Replace the dirty batch and cover every inch. Use steel wool where stubborn rust remains. Rinse well, dry immediately, and give the pan about 5 minutes in the hot oven to remove lingering moisture. Let it cool briefly. Then coat the entire pan with avocado oil. Wipe the excess until almost nothing appears to remain. Place a baking sheet below and bake the skillet upside down at 450 degrees for 30 minutes. Cool it before each new coat and repeat the process 3 to 5 times. I did 5 on this restoration. Then fry the egg and see what you built. And when you do, come back and tell me, did you rescue an old family pan or find one secondhand like I did? I want to know how old it is and where it came from. Every restored cast iron pan has a history, and I would rather hear that history continued than see another good piece of iron discarded. That is the Brazilian method I want to pass on. Use what you have, understand what the material needs, do the patient work, and care for it well enough that somebody else may still be cooking in that pan many years from now.